This is a bill that we have seen in this committee before. We did see it last term or the last two terms ago or 2 years ago. Um, and there's been some changes to it from the previous versions this time around. But I do need to get some clarity because I'll be honest, and this is not me being political in any way, shape, or form. I literally had a conversation with the Speaker of the House about this bill just a couple weeks ago. I left that meeting thinking I understood the bill better. But when I talked to LCO and my lawyer on my team, they had a different view of it. And I'm like, either the Speaker of the House, or I misinterpreted Speaker of the House, or Speaker of the House doesn't concept the bill, or LCO and my lawyer's wrong, which I would tend to believe that they're going to be right because they're the lawyers, the way it's written. So I'm asking for some clarity up front right away. There is a 12-month for not less than 12 months. So it says resided in such building complex or mobile manufactured within 12 months. So here's my question. It's not hypothetical. I'm asking the specific question. If somebody were to sign a lease on January 1st, first time ever moving into a building, they are coming up for renewal the next year. So December 31st, their lease technically ends. It's a 1-year lease. Their lease comes in December 31st. Are they already protected by this just clause provision when they're going through that negotiations for the next time? Or is it the first year is not protected, and then after you renew, then you're protected?
It is after you renew, not after you renew, but if after you go month to month. So let's say that you have your rental payment on the 10th of the month. So January 10th, then your last rental payment would be the following January 10th, or maybe December 10th.
December 10th.
You would have then until January 10th to evict somebody for a lapse of time. Once January 10th hits and you pay that rent, you are then in an oral lease agreement. That is your 13th month. You can then no longer evict somebody. They are covered by a just cause.
And then what happens if it's January 1st? Everything's due on the 1st. There's a lot of times rents are due on the 1st. So when they go to negotiate that new deal, they've paid December 1st. Mm-hmm. They've lived in there through December 31st. When you negotiate that, you're saying, okay, I want to extend you for another year. My question, would they be protected for that in that scenario? Because I'm telling you, I've had a conversation with LCO, who's sitting over here now, Jonathan. And from my understanding with the conversation with them is, yes, they would be protected in that scenario. So are you saying that's not the intent of the bill?
The intent of the bill is that you would be protected once you pay that 13th month. That is when you go into that oral agreement for the 13th month, you will then be protected. But you have at the end of that 12 month to then lapse of time evict somebody, but only that time.
Well, that's not what it says. So we'll go back to it has resided, has nothing to do with payment, right? So that's the first thing. And so then your intent does not match at all what's on this piece of paper. This piece of paper, and I've had this conversation with LCO, and I have a couple amendments in there that we could talk about trying to maybe correct this, is it says resided. And I've even had the conversation about what happens if a person just doesn't leave. They just doesn't leave, right? That's happened many, many times. And they make their payment on December 1st. January 2nd comes and they're still there. Are they now protected because they're past that, what has resided in over a year? They would have been a year and 1 day in theoretically that situation. When I talked to the Speaker of the House said, listen, you should have a year as a landlord to, hey, if you want to renew this person, you had a year. And I can understand that. Like I can get that thought process. You had a year, you want to renew them, then after that, the next time you come back around, like, hey, like you had your chance, right? I wouldn't necessarily support that, but I get that thought process. That's not how this is written. This is not how this is interpreted. And I'm telling you, LCO, and if Jonathan can speak up on it, he can give his interpretation of it. That's not what it is, because it literally says resided and not paid. I do worry that the way this bill is written today, that literally the second you sign them up for a contract or at least for a year, they are already protected immediately because they will live there for that year, 12 months, because they will live there physically 12 months, unless you sign only to 11-month deal, which would be a way to circumvent this, which I don't think people want to do, is only sign for 11-month leases. But to do that, and then now they're protected from day one. And I don't think that's the intent of the bill, but if it is, please let me know so that we can just our mental thought process, because that's not the way I thought the bill.
No, the intent is for 12 months and then an opportunity to evaluate the tenant landlord relationship.
All right, then I don't know if we can take a pause second and talk to LCO about that to do this, or you just want to keep moving on and I can put amendments in there, because then that's not what we're passing. So that means literally everything you guys are going to vote on today about this bill is not what you're saying is going to happen. And you could tell me it's going to change, but then we can make the change right now and we could do that. And I think I have an amendment to do that. Mr. Chair, the clerk has an amendment. Would you please ask the clerk to distribute the amendment? Where actually Jackson's going to be doing that right now, but it could help. And I'd be allowed to summarize after. It's going to be LCO 6063, the amendment. And I'll ask to be taken by roll the vote when we review it. The way it's written currently right now, my belief is that the tenant would be protected immediately after they sign the first lease, as long as they're going to live there a year, and they do live there a year. This would extend it theoretically for 2 years, but really it's only extending it for 1 year because it's living 24 months, right? So we're giving that year. That's why it's 24 months. It's not getting. If you were to reword this properly and give the year, then this amendment wouldn't be needed, right? So if this is just saying you have the flexibility, that second renewal or the first renewal, but not the second renewal. That's why it's 24 months based on the way this is written. So again, this is not to extend it for 2 years. This is to extend it to give that one chance at renewal at 12 months for the landlord to be able to renew without being held to these just cause requirements.
So looking at this amendment, the issue I take with it is that it extends from 12 to 24 months. The intent was never to have a full year for a landlord or housing provider to evaluate post that first year. It was to let them have that first year to evaluate. Now, you are correct that in the way that you may be correct that in the way that it's written, it would not give them that opportunity. However, the solution in my mind would be a 13th month, so they can have a month after they've already reviewed for a year because they've had that tenant for a year. It would not be a full year of evaluation post the first lease. Representative Scott.
Will you? I would consider withdrawing my amendment if you're going to put an amendment in to do that in return.
Yes, we'll do that. So I would, I would like to do an oral amendment.
Well,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
All right, staying on my amendments for the second, if I can. Yeah. Some of the part of the, so it's really complicated. This sentence is very complicated. It's super complicated because the word resides in there. And I'm sorry to get really into the weeds, but this is what it is. Like, this is how we're going to interpret it. I don't mean to be a pain right from the beginning, but this is literally the biggest part of this bill. It's reside. So when you say 13th month, is it paying and residing for 13 months, or do they just stay there for 13 months? That's where we're getting down into the nitty gritty, but it's super important that when someone's residing there, doesn't mean necessarily paying. They might pay for the 12 months and be pissed that they're not getting the lease that they want. And they're going to stay there for that 13th month, and now they're protected. And we've had that discussion with the LCO yesterday. I literally had this conversation with Jonathan about how that is a loop around this to all of a sudden now get the protections right away, theoretically, without any official renewal. I don't know the 100%. I'm not a lawyer, but this needs to be worked out, and we really need to figure it out now. Like, this is a massive bill for you guys, and this is clearly not the intent. It's not the kind of speaker of the House. I believe it's not the intent of you. We need to figure out the wording that makes sense for this so we all can agree. Because right now, I don't even know if you have support on your side, because this is not the intent. So I have not pulled my amendment yet.
We will stand at ease.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I understand that there's a conversation going on, but this is a conversation that I believe should be on the record, debating the amendment that's before us.
We'll take a 10-minute recess.
I don't think I actually got fully through to the summarization. We're talking back and forth, but I'd like to summarize if I can. The amendment, basically the way it's written, and I know we're going to have a further conversation about this, maybe in another amendment or so, but as written, it says reside in such building, complex, or mobile manufactured home for not less than 12 months. We're asking that to be switched to, I don't know if I have, I don't know where I lost it to. 20 to 24 months. Yep. From 12, we're basically just striking the word 12 and making it 24 in a loop. And again, in this theoretical way, It's really just protecting at that first renewal. If it's a year lease, then a second year lease, that second time when they come up for renewal, the second time in this scenario, the tenant would be protected under the just cause protections for that second renewal based on the way this is written, as long as 2 1-year leases. So, and that's more the intent of what the bill is. The intent of the bill was to protect the resident after that first renewal. And that's what this is doing for the 24 months, based on the way it's written today.
The amendment fails.
As previously discussed, I if you would like, I could defer to you to discuss the amendment that you're potentially running on this topic, so we can stay on topic before going into the rest of the bill. If you'd like, if not, I can continue with the floor. You let me know how you'd like to proceed.
Thank you, Representative. I will take that. I would like to offer an oral amendment. It is similarly worded to the amendment that we had just heard, but in it will be in line 16, strike 12, and insert 13 in lieu thereof, rather than 24. I do understand the good ranking members' frustration with the intent, but I do think 24 months goes too far. 13 months gives you an extra month to make a decision rather than a full year after somebody has already been residing for a year.
With this amendment, we're pushing to 13 months because the word resides still lives in the statement. If this were to be part of the bill, if someone were to live in the apartment and have a lease for a year, they're still negotiating and no negotiation has happened for 13, and then that 13th month goes through, and we're talking, let's say from a calendar year, from January 1st to December 31st, that's when their lease is. They're still negotiating, they don't have it, but it says 13 months. If we get to February 1st, which is 13 months and a day, does that automatically apply to these protections that automatically apply to that tenant in that scenario, so that they now will have the just cause protections?
It is my understanding that unless there is an action filed, then yes.
Yeah, because of that, and again, we're going to get back to the word resides. Unfortunately, this is. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm playing one today, and I think the resides word is a massive problem with this thing. And I understand we've acknowledged that the resides is a problem. We're going to try to look at that down the road, but I think some of it is just we're rushing. This is a bill that's been around for a couple of years. We shouldn't be rushing. Maybe because we have 37 other bills that we're dealing with, and we got 13 bills last night at 9 o'clock at night that had the S language. Maybe because of that, we're missing some of this stuff. So I think this is a bigger problem. We're on bill number 1, and we're on line 15 of bill number 1 that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to have a lot more problems. So I think this is a consistent problem we're going to see throughout today, and it's very frustrating. So I'm going to have to be a no, and I definitely tell my caucus to be a no on this because the wording is still not accurate. While it might be slightly better, it's not accurate. It's not to what the intent, and it's not what the intent of the Speaker of the House and what the chairs have. So it's something I can't support.